Okay, so we're back, and I've let my painting dry up a little bit so that we can begin working on it again. So I've mixed up some different colors and shades of green, um, and I'm going to mix up some brown right now. So I'm going to use. Let me put this over here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm going to use a little bit of the dark or the crimson red. There we go. A little bit more water on that. All right, so I'm just using this end piece of my watercolor kit to get a little bit of red in there. Now you can see I've hydrated it. Now I'm transferring it to mix. So that's what you're supposed to do with paint, you guys. You want to hydrate it up. So I'm doing some of the dark green, right? And you want to hydrate it up and then move it into your mixing palette so that you're not contaminating your colors by double dipping into your different little pans there, your little watercolor pans. So I've put some red and green together, and let me mix them up a little bit with my brush. So red and green mixed together make a pretty natural looking brown. And this is where it's good to have your little paper, your test paper, so you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to move this over so you can see it a little better. So there's some brown, all right? And we'll add a little more water so you can kind of see. It makes a very natural looking brown. And you can experiment with different shades of green, with the regular red and the regular green, and see how those look together. But in contrast, let's take a look at the brown on your palette, in your paint set here. Not in your palette, but in your paint set, sorry. So this is the difference. Now, this is brown, right? But this doesn't look as natural as, say, this looks. And this, with some of the brown that's in your palette on it, can make a big difference on how natural your brown looks, right? So you can see I'm just putting a little bit of this brown from my paint set in with the brown I just mixed. And it looks much more natural. And of course you can do it a little bit more green brown or a little bit more red brown. So like if I add a little bit more red to this, we'll put a little bit of red here, and then we'll dip in our little bit of brown there. And you can see that it's going to give it kind of a red brown look, right? These are much more natural looking colors than you would get if you just used it straight from your paint set. So I want you to make sure that while you're painting, that you are mixing colors and trying different combinations. See what it looks like. That's why you have a test paper, right? So if I'm looking at some of the greens that I just did, and let's just take a quick look. So I mixed up some different kind of green colors. There's that one. That's kind of a turquoise. And notice that I'm rinsing my brush in between dipping. Right? These are all colors I got from mixing. Right? They don't come straight from my paint set. So they're just a little bit different. Let's see what this one is. Did I do that one already? I think I did that one. I didn't do is this one. I think this has more blue in it. Let's see. Yeah, it's definitely a bit more bluish. Right. So you see I've got quite a good variety of greens. Let me show you the other ones that I've mixed. So here's another green, more of a yellow green, right? And then here's another one that I mixed up. Once again, these are not directly from the paints, they're mixed. So you can see I have a pretty good palette of different colored greens and some different browns that I'm working with. And then the other thing that I'm doing is I'm using some black. And now remember I told you we don't normally use a lot of black And if you'll notice in my black here, and if you can really see this, in my black, I put a little spot of red in it as well. So it's not black, 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 right? Has a little different look to it. So that's what I'm doing there. So we're going to put another layer on of some paint here. And once again, I'm going to start at the top where I started last time, so that I don't drag my brush or my hand or my arm over paint that it's wet. I've already painted on it. So let's see. We'll go back and do another layer of some green here. We'll try that. That's still a little too light. I think that was what I was using for my pot before. So let's go back over here. We'll get a little bit of green, this little bit darker green, because I notice on my leaves here that there's some of the leaves have a little bit of a darker side to them. So we'll get a little bit of darker green there, and we'll kind of make it look a little more, try to make it look a little more natural. Okay. And I see on this one here, I noticed that it's kind of darker on the edge on that one, so it's kind of going along on that. And there we go. This one doesn't quite, just has a little bit darker on the tip. And I can also, remember, I can also add in some water if it's looking too unnatural. So if I don't want like a really exact line there, I can put a little bit of water in, right, to kind of blend it. Okay. So you notice that I'm going pretty slow here, right? I'm trying not to overdo it, and it's easy to overdo if you're not careful. So like here I am, got a little bit too much water there. I'm gonna blot it up a little bit, and I'm gonna make that tip come out so it looks a little more natural. There we go. Okay, of that particular leaf. All right, so let's just continue on here. I'm getting a little bit more green, and I'm actually looking at my still life. So I'm actually looking at what I'm painting here, and I'm just following where the shadows are, where the darker part of the leaf is. And in this case, the light's coming from the side on my composition here. And so I can see that it's a little darker on one side of the leaf than on the other. And in this case, it's a little darker right there because the light's kind of coming from that way, but you can see it on the tip of the leaf there. So once again, I'm going to take a little bit of water and carefully put a little extra on there so it kind of blends a little bit more, right? I don't want it to look like I just put a blob on there, right? So this is the fun part, you guys, of layering over stuff and seeing this cool effect that you get from doing this layering. Now I'm gonna put another layer on the branches here, right? Because I've got these branches kind of coming out. So I'm gonna go back to my brown. There's a little bit of brown there. I've got a little bit of brown there too. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that's looking good. All right, so now I'm gonna go back here and I'm gonna put another little kind of line on my branches, so that, and this is using the very tip of my brush. I'm going to darken it up a little bit here. Bark can have this really interesting kind of look to it. So I'm trying to give it that little bit of interest. And I've got this other one over here that's kind of like randomly coming around the side. So we'll just, that goes right over the top of our, and it's kind of decrepit. It doesn't have anything growing from it right now. But we're going to try to give it that look that it's a little darker. And there's little bumps coming out from the side of this. You know, when you're doing this, you'll notice these little funny details, like where there were little sprouts coming off of the side, and it's kind of like little nodules. And this is what makes your painting look realistic, right? Is by doing, by putting in these little details that you see when you're in your right brain. You really tend to see these details much more, and you're going to find that it's really gonna help you with your painting skills to have them look a little bit more detailed by just adding a little bit there, right? So you don't want to go into too much. Now I'm going to try to put a little bit of detail in. You know, this is one of those money plants or whatever where they kind of put braids in. They braid the plants. So I'm going to try to put a little darkness in here. And notice I get quiet sometimes as I'm looking and painting. Trying to stay in my right brain a little more, right? So I'm gonna leave that. I don't want to do too much because once again I got to let it dry before I keep adding more things to it. So I'm looking at my bottle here now. Let's see, what am I missing on my bottle? So I'm noticing that where this branch goes behind, as I can see, I see this kind of this weird reflection that it's not, what do you call it? It's not, it's not exactly how the branch goes. So as I'm looking at it, I'm looking at this reflection, or not only the reflection, but the distortion of the branch. And I'm trying to keep from the exact same space, so I don't want to go too much. But this here is kind of distorted, and it's got a kind of a weird look to it. So the branch you're seeing the branch through the glass stopper here, but it's not, it's kind of moved, it's distorted or bent by the glass, because the glass is bent, right? And then I'm looking at this bottle, and I can see that there's, I can see through it, there's kind of a shadow there. And so I'm gonna make that shadow on the bottle that you can see right through it. You can see this shadow right through the bottle. That's good. So it's tricky. Glass can be a little tricky. You don't want to overdo it, but you also want to, it has to look realistic, right? So let me get a little bit, there's a little bit of brown reflection there. And we're going to use a little bit of this other brown, just a little, just to kind of put in here, because we want it to look a little like it's a different color from the, notice I'm just kind of dabbing it, right? I'm not, this is just trying to carefully get a little bit of detail in here without overdoing it, right? We don't need to overdo it. Right, now let's look at how this is looking here. So this is looking pretty good. I think we've got a really good start with this. I'm seeing I'm missing just a little bit of paint on the side here where I originally had coming down like this, and I can see that I just need a tiny bit. Don't want to overdo it, right? And I want to kind of even that out so it doesn't look lopsided, and that's where we're at right there. Okay. There we go. We're leaving a little bit of space at the top there where there's a little another little reflection. So I've got this blocked off with tape because I want that's a pretty good reflection. I want to keep that white. And so I'm going to go back over this a little bit because there's some darkness in this center because there's light coming from this side and then there's reflected light coming from this side. So I have to be careful that I keep that little bit of darkness in here. So I'm going to get a little bit of darker. It's not too much, right? And I did this yesterday the last time we were painting this, and it was I did have a day in between. Notice that I'm kind of feathering it out just a little bit with some water. So I'm not doing too much. Don't want it to look too dark, but it is definitely a little darker right here. All right, so I'm just going to make that clear that it's just a little darker on this part. All right. Once again, get a little bit of water there so it doesn't look too funky. Okay. A little darker in the middle. And just to make sure that it doesn't get too dark, I'm going to go back to some of this really bright green, and we'll put just a little bit on the edge there just to kind of remind us that we want that lighter color. All right, so that's looking pretty good. It's probably about as much as I can do right this moment while I'm looking at it before I have to go back and let it dry some more. So we'll do a little bit more on the camera part. It's dry enough that I can go back now. So now I'm going to get back to this black. Right. Remember, I'm going pretty light with the black. I'm not going dark, dark, dark because I'm doing this in layers. So I want to make sure that I have the right look here with the camera from my point of view, right? Because I'm looking at it here, and I'm the same point of view every time. So, and the way you can do that is you can actually put tape on the floor, or put a little mark and say, hey, I'm always looking from right here at my composition. And let's see, what part do I want to do? I think I want to work over on this side just a little bit, because here we've got that strap coming back down. The strap kind of goes in front here. And I did a little bit of it yesterday, you can see. Looking like that for right now, so that's a good start. And here I've got my lens, so let's put another layer on this lens here, because it definitely needs a little bit of darkening up on this side anyway, because this is the side that has a little bit of shadow on it as we come through. And we'll put a little detail on this side too. So here we are, kind of going like this. So So notice I'm just, I'm carefully doing this. I'm not putting too much on. I'm not trying to rush it. And that's a big problem that we all have. We try to rush things, and then we do that, and then it looks like crap, right? So we really want to take our time, and definitely, so I definitely need some little bit darker here, because this is where the camera kind of has a little bit of a curve to the body, and so this is more in shadow over here. But then there's a little bit of a light spot where the chrome is, so I've left that. Right. And you notice that I'm just painting shapes of color, and I'm painting the shapes of color that I see, and I'm just picking one at a time and trying to do it as slowly as possible so I'm not messing anything up. I'll regret it later if I try to rush through. Because I'll be like, why in the world didn't I, pay attention and make it look right? Right? So let's just do this. I need another little bit of kind of the darker black here. But you'll notice that a lot of what I've done, right, is more light, is more gray. Because like I told you, I can always make it darker, but I can't make it lighter. And if I try, it's going to look funky. So I'm just really carefully kind of filling in these shapes of color. In this case, the shape of color that I'm filling in is black. Some will say that's the absence of all color, right? Black is the absence of all color. So now that this other part is dry, see, I can start to fill in just a little bit more detail. And down here I have another kind of a darker line, or a darker shape. It's kind of like a little rectangular shape here at the top. And there's a timer button here, so I'm going to kind of put that in just a little bit. Put that little kind of a circle shape in. Right, and let's get this thing fixed up just a little, because here we are at this point. It needs to come together a little more. Okay, so I'm getting to a point now where I probably need to stop again, just so I can get this correct. And I can see that there's some light and shadow here, so because I've already done this part, I'm gonna try to fill in a little bit of the light and shadow, just slightly here, so I can kind of get a little darker there. And I've got this guy coming over. Right, let's see here. It's a little bit darker. And this is pretty much exactly how it looks, you guys. Okay, so remember what I said, don't worry if it's not perfect, right? Because nothing is exactly perfect, but have some fun with it. Like this is supposed to be a fun assignment, right? It's not supposed to be something that you're stressing over. So enjoy it, and this is practice, you guys. It's practice on how to paint, Right, so we're going to get our camera looking decent here. And let's see, I think I have one more thing I can add, kind of define this a little bit more. So I'm putting these shapes in. I'm not drawing anything, you guys. I'm just putting the shapes of color in, right? Where they need to go. Okay. And I think like I need to stop here before I go overboard. You know, like I said, it's pretty easy to overdo it if you're not careful. So I'm gonna give it a break and let it dry again. As I'm looking at this, I don't see anything else that I really need to deal with at this moment. I want to let this part kind of gel and dry up so I can come back. You know, what I might do though, before I do anything else, what I might do is I might put a little bit of shadow in. And in the shadows are often a little blue looking. So I'm going to get just a little bit of this kind of bluish color here. Let's see, kind of a little turquoisey. I think this is what I want. Yeah, I think that looks good. So sometimes the shadows actually are reflecting light. So as I see this shadow here, and I do have to be careful with shadows because you can, if you like this part here, I already painted on a little bit. So I want to be really careful that I don't get the shadow up into the color I have over here, but I can get right to the edge and make it look pretty natural, I think. Let's see here. So I'm just looking, I'm actually looking at my composition here, the actual still life as I'm doing this, so I can see what it looks like. And I'm just making these shapes of color, right? The shadow is a shape of color. There's a little bit of shadow here. From the camera, I'll put that there. And there's a little bit of shadow underneath these guys. I can kind of put that in a little bit. Okay. This is what's going to make it look a little more natural, is when you have these shadows in, right? Because everything is going to cast a shadow. If it has light on it, there'll be some shadow, even if it's really faint. So I'm just starting off with this little bit here, and I'm just trying to make it look more natural. Okay, so it's time, remember to rinse your brush in between, right? Don't ever leave it just in your water. Take it out, set it down. So now we're gonna take a break again, right? We'll come back to this and do another round of layering. And this is why I tell you, you can spend a lot of time on one painting because it's not just one coat. You're gonna keep doing it over and over until you get the effect that you want.